Have you ever noticed how some words are said so many times that they start to lose their weight? They keep being spoken, but they stop being felt. The Lord's Prayer is like that for millions of people. It echoes in churches, homes, family meals, and beside beds before sleep. It is recited almost automatically, like a code learned in childhood. But the question almost no one asks is, why exactly these words? Why did Jesus, in a world filled with pain, conflict, and need, choose this specific model of prayer? Before continuing, leave a like on this video. That helps YouTube take this message to more people who, perhaps without realizing it, are also praying without understanding what they are saying. And stay with me until the end, because the way you will look at this prayer may completely change your spiritual life. Jesus did not say, "Repeat this always." He said, "Pray like this." That difference changes everything. This means the Lord's Prayer is not just a formula to be repeated, but a spiritual map, a training of the mind and heart, a way to align the human being with the reality of the kingdom of God. It is prayer, yes, but it is also strategy, vision, and inner transformation. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I am helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time." And perhaps that is exactly what has been lost. We repeat the prayer, but we stop feeling this deep need. We turn a cry into a habit. Think of something simple from everyday life. How many times have you driven to a familiar place and, upon arriving, realized you don't remember the route? You were there physically, but your mind was absent. With prayer, something similar happens. The mouth follows the path, but the heart stays behind. Jesus did not want that. He lived in a context of extreme spiritual tension. The people suffered under Roman oppression, hardened religious leaders, and a constant sense of divine abandonment. In that scenario, Jesus delivers a prayer that does not begin with fear, guilt, or desperation, but with identity. And here is the point many ignore. The Lord's Prayer does not start by talking about problems. It starts by redefining who God is and who we are before Him. This is intentional. Today, when someone prays, they usually start like this: "Lord, I need." "God, fix this." "Father, look at my situation." But Jesus reverses the logic. Before any request, He repositions the one who prays in the spiritual world. C.S. Lewis said that true prayer does not change God, it changes the one who prays. And the Lord's Prayer was built exactly for that. Each phrase dismantles a modern illusion: self-sufficiency, control, hurry, and ego at the center. Throughout this video, we will walk phrase by phrase through this prayer, not as those who repeat something memorized, but as those who discover a spiritual weapon hidden in plain sight. We will see why each word was chosen, what it confronts within us, and how it prepares us to face temptation, fear, anxiety, and even evil. And here is an important warning. After understanding this, you will never be able to pray the same way again, because awareness creates responsibility. If you know someone who prays but feels that God is distant, share this video. Sometimes the distance is not in God, but in the way we approach Him. There is a detail in the Lord's Prayer that most people overlook, a detail so simple, so short, that many say it without taking a breath. But it is precisely there that everything begins, and also where everything can collapse if it is not understood. Jesus does not begin this prayer talking about sin. He does not begin by asking for anything. He does not begin by talking about power, fear, or need. He begins with a relationship. Our Father who art in heaven. These words are not poetic. They are dangerous, because they destroy a deeply rooted idea within us, that God is distant, cold, inaccessible, or eternally disappointed. C.S. Lewis wrote something that helps us understand this with surgical precision. God is not looking for people who use Him, but for children who trust Him. When Jesus says Father, He is not offering a beautiful metaphor. He is completely redefining how the human being relates to the Creator. It is not a symbolic title. It is an existential invitation. And here a silent conflict arises, because for many people, the word Father does not evoke safety. It evokes absence, frustration, fear, emotional distance. And Jesus knew this. Even so, He insists. Why? Because the Father Jesus refers to is not a projection of your past, but a correction of it. The problem is that many people pray like orphans. They pray asking permission to exist. They pray like those who expect to be tolerated, not loved. And that changes everything. Imagine two simple scenes. In the first, an employee enters the boss's office, nervous, rehearsing every word, afraid of saying the wrong thing. In the second, a child runs into the Father's arms, without a speech, without strategy, without fear. Jesus is saying, this is how you enter the presence of God, not as someone negotiating, but as someone who belongs. C.S. Lewis said that true spiritual transformation begins when we stop seeing God only as the Almighty and begin to recognize Him as intimate, not less majestic, but closer than we dare to admit. And then Jesus adds something crucial, who art in heaven. This prevents the opposite error, reducing God to something small, controllable, or overly familiar. He is Father, but He is not like us. He is close, but not predictable. He loves, but He does not negotiate principles. This tension is essential. Intimacy without triviality, majesty without distance. When you pray like this, something changes inside you. You do not begin the prayer trying to convince God to hear you. You begin knowing you are already being heard. And that creates a completely different emotional and spiritual foundation. Notice how Jesus lived this. In moments of extreme pain, such as at Lazarus' tomb or in Gethsemane, He begins His words the same way. Father, not because the pain disappeared, but because the relationship remained. Now, think honestly. How have you been praying? Like someone trying to access a complex system? Or like someone who knows they belong? Here comes one of C.S. Lewis's deepest ideas. Prayer doesn't change God. It changes the one who prays. And the Lord's Prayer begins by changing who you believe you are before God. If you get this wrong, the rest of the prayer becomes effort. But if you get this right, everything else flows as a consequence. That is why, before any request, Jesus establishes identity. Before talking about bread, Jesus talks about sonship. Before talking about forgiveness, Jesus talks about belonging. If this idea is already confronting the way you pray, write in the comments, I no longer pray like an orphan. This is a personal milestone. Because when you understand that God is Father, you stop praying out of fear, and you begin to pray out of trust. And that prepares the ground for the next phrase, one of the most forgotten and, at the same time, most demanding of the entire prayer, hallowed be thy name. That is where prayer stops being comfort and becomes transformation. Next, you will understand why this phrase is not about beautiful words, but about a life that reveals who God truly is to the world. And this can radically change the way you live your faith. Up to this point, the prayer has welcomed us. It has reminded us who God is and who we are before Him. But now it begins to confront us. Hallowed be thy name. This is one of those phrases that almost everyone says without stopping to think. It sounds reverent, spiritual, and correct. But if truly understood, it stops being comfortable. Because to hallow is not just to praise. To hallow is to set apart, to honor, to treat as absolutely distinct. When Jesus teaches this phrase, He is not just saying, acknowledge that God is holy. That was already obvious to the Jews. What He is saying is far more radical. Live in such a way that God's name is seen as holy through you. This completely changes the weight of the prayer. In the Bible, a name is not a detail. A name carries identity, character, authority. When Moses asks God what His name is, the answer is not a label, but a revelation of essence. I am. C.S. Lewis said that Christianity is not only something we believe, but something we embody, and here that becomes clear. To hallow God's name is not just a verbal act. It is an existential commitment. Think of something simple and everyday. When someone mentions the name of a person you deeply respect, your tone automatically changes. There is care, weight, intention. Now imagine the name of God, the Creator, Sustainer, and Redeemer, being treated as something common, trivial, or disposable. Jesus is saying, when you pray, remember whom you represent. Here is an uncomfortable but necessary question. If someone knew God only by the way you live, what image would they have of Him? Because that is what is at stake. To hallow God's name means that my choices, my words, my attitudes cannot contradict what I declare with my mouth. It is not perfection, it is coherence. C.S. Lewis wrote something that fits perfectly here. The greatest barrier to Christianity today is not the argument against it, but the Christian who does not live what he professes. That hurts because it is true. We live in an era where God's name is mentioned all the time, but rarely treated as holy. It appears in speeches, songs, slogans, and empty promises. And Jesus calls us to the opposite, to be people who reveal God instead of using Him. When you pray, hallowed be thy name, you are saying, may my life not deny who you are. May I not use your name to justify my desires. May I not reduce your holiness to my convenience. This requires inner vigilance. because it is easy to praise with words and live disconnected. It is easy to talk about God on Sunday and ignore Him on Monday. It is easy to call Him Lord and not obey. Jesus was not interested in a spirituality of appearance. He was forming people whose lives would be a living prayer. How many times has someone said, "I don't want faith because of religious people"? That is God's name being desecrated, not by atheists, but by incoherence. And this is not an accusation. It is an invitation to awareness. To hallow God's name is to live in such a way that His presence is recognized, not imposed. It is to make Christ's character visible in the details. Honesty when no one is watching. Mercy when it would be easier to judge. Faithfulness when it would be convenient to compromise principles. And here is the central point. Before Jesus teaches us to ask for anything, He teaches us to revere. Because a faith that begins by asking without honoring ends up becoming utilitarian. God becomes a means, not the end. Have you ever stopped to think whether your life honors the name you profess? If so, write in the comments, "May His name be seen in me." Because the Lord's Prayer is not only a vertical prayer, it is a horizontal responsibility. And now, Jesus takes an even bolder step. After aligning identity and character, He teaches us to ask for something that touches power, authority, and spiritual government. Thy kingdom come. There is a part of the Lord's Prayer that is almost always said too quickly. A part many prefer not to explore deeply, because it confronts us. It exposes wounds. It stirs memories we would rather keep buried. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Here, Jesus is not just teaching a beautiful phrase to repeat. He is revealing a profound spiritual law. There is no true freedom without forgiveness. And this is uncomfortable, because forgiveness does not seem fair at first glance. Let's be honest. In daily life, forgiving is not natural. It is unnatural. When someone betrays us, abandons us, humiliates us, or deeply wounds us, the immediate impulse is not to release, but to protect. We build internal walls, replay what happened in our minds, and without realizing it, we make pain our identity. C.S. Lewis was precise when he said, "Everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have something to forgive." And that is exactly where prayer becomes spiritual warfare, because forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about who you become when you choose not to forgive. Notice how Jesus connects the ideas. As we forgive, He does not say, "Forgive me because I deserve it," but "Forgive me in the same way I choose to forgive." This is not bargaining, it is spiritual mirroring. In everyday life, this shows up practically. That old resentment toward an absent father, the silent bitterness of a marriage that did not turn out as you dreamed, the wound of a friendship that ended without explanation. All of this seems separate from faith, but it is not. These untreated pains seep into prayer, into how you see God, and even into how you see yourself. Jesus knew this. That is why He did not place forgiveness as an extra in faith, but as a central part of the conversation with the Father. Because while you keep someone imprisoned in your memory, you yourself remain trapped in the past. And here is the point almost no one teaches. Forgiving is not absolving the wrong or denying the pain. Forgiving is removing from the other person the power to continue governing your emotions. It is saying, "What you did was real, but it will not be eternal inside me." Lewis also wrote something deeply liberating. To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable, because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. This changes everything, because the standard of forgiveness is not human behavior, but the cross. Jesus did not wait for perfect repentance, complete explanations, or ideal apologies. He forgave while He was still being wounded. And before moving on, allow me a sincere invitation. Comment if this part of the prayer is the hardest for you. This simple act creates community, and perhaps someone will read your experience and realize they are not alone. Now we enter an even more intense territory, the daily struggle against temptation, the invisible evil, and the battlefield that is the human mind. Because prayer does not end in the past that binds us, it prepares us for the battles that are still to come. There is a deep reason why Jesus ends the Lord's Prayer talking about temptation, deliverance from evil, and victory. He knew something many ignore. Spiritual life is not neutral. It happens on contested ground. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This phrase is not a fragile request. It is a lucid recognition of reality. Jesus is not saying we are too weak to live, but that we are too vulnerable to live alone. There is a huge difference. In everyday life, temptation rarely appears as something obviously wrong. It comes disguised as quick relief, emotional justification, small concessions that seem harmless, a thought you feed, a habit you normalize, a choice you postpone confronting. C.S. Lewis captured this masterfully when he wrote, "The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turns, without milestones, without signposts." Jesus knew this. That is why he taught us to pray before the fall, not after it. Here, prayer is vigilance, it is strategy, it is spiritual awareness. When you pray, "Lead us not into temptation," you are saying, "Father, guide my steps away from what can destroy me, even when I do not perceive the danger." And then comes the most powerful part: deliver us from evil. It is not just deliverance from sin, but from the evil one, from the system that tries to corrode your faith, steal your identity, and weaken your hope. We live in an era that avoids talking about this. We prefer to explain everything only as psychological, social, or chemical. But Jesus makes it clear, there is a real spiritual battle happening, not to frighten us, but to prepare us. And here the prayer reaches its climax. "For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever." This is not a polite closing. It is a declaration of victory. It is the moment when you stop looking at the size of the battle and remember who governs the battlefield. In everyday life, this changes everything. When you face anxiety, you do not end the prayer focused on fear, but on sovereignty. When pain seems greater than hope, you finish by remembering who holds power. When the world seems chaotic, you anchor your mind in eternity. C.S. Lewis wrote something that perfectly summarizes this moment. Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. The Lord's Prayer teaches us to hear that call. It pulls us out of spiritual superficiality and reminds us that faith is not mechanical repetition, it is daily alignment. Now, allow me to ask you directly, have you been reciting this prayer or living this prayer? Because there is an abyss of difference between repeating words and allowing them to shape your decisions, your relationships, your worldview, and your trust in God. If this video spoke to you, leave your like now. This helps this message reach more people who are searching for spiritual depth amid the noise of the world. And subscribe to the C.S. Lewis Mastery channel, because here we do not talk about shallow faith, but about a faith that is thought, lived, and rooted in truth. Before closing, write in the comments, which part of the Lord's Prayer confronted you the most today? This interaction creates something powerful, a community that walks together. Thank you for watching this video. We ask that you subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, activate the notification bell so you can be notified about our posts. The Lord's Prayer was not made to be merely spoken. It was made to be lived. And when that happens, something changes. Not only in heaven, but within you. See you in the next video.